Hello everyone, I'm sure you know the drill already. A new blog chapter released a few days ago, and I'm here to review it, give my thoughts on it, and give my predictions for the next chapter. But before we begin that, I'd like to ask you to like the video and also subscribe if you enjoy the type of content, since I do post exclusively blog content at the moment, and I'm going to begin posting more often. But with that out of the way, let's get into the video. This chapter picks up from the last chapter where the Ubers basically devour the entire match with their amazing defensive skills and begin going up the field with the ball. The little blurb at the beginning of this chapter says, through the exchange of tactics and ideas, a unified Ubers easily steals the ball and attacks on the short counter. And we cut to Gagamaru, who's defending at the goalpost, questioning who's going to shoot and commenting on how impressive it was that they flipped so quickly. We then go to Nika, who has the ball, who quickly passes it to Sendo, and Gagamaru notes that they're just cycling passes around, but in the end, it's probably going to be the King Barou. To stop this from happening, Yukimiya decides to cut off Barou's shooting angle and try to get in front of him, which does succeed, but in a change of events that no one expected, the King Barou passes the ball. Even Gagamaru himself, who doesn't even know Barou like that, says Barou passed. How did they get him to do that? And then we see Nico and Sendo switch out the ball once again, and in the midst of all this chaos, Gagamaru has no idea who has the ball. But the one being who thrives in all this chaos shoots the ball from out of nowhere, shooting from Gagamaru's blind spot. Before we get to see if Barou make this shot or not, it cuts back to the Italy Stratum, where he's talking to Mark Snuffy. This conversation does hinge on the past conversation that happened in the last chapter, so for the sake of the video, I'll recap that too as well real quick. In the last chapter, we see Mark Snuffy talking to the Blue Lockers and the U20 players about what soccer is to them. Mainly everyone responds with it's their dream and what they would bet their entire lives on, and Mark Snuffy says it's all very pure and teenage answers. But then he asks them what will they have when football is taken away from them. He continues to say there's nothing wrong with devoting themselves to football just because they love it, but injuries and setbacks do happen. And he's asking what would you have done if one day for some reason or another you were no longer able to play. And that those who can't answer this question will forever be dreamers and amateurs. He continues to say for a professional, winning is a duty and an obligation. Through winning we are able to earn money and put food on the table. Now I want you all to remember this, football is a job. Think of a club like the Ubers as a corporation. Based on that, games are business deals, and the players are employees. And basically this signifies that Mark Snuffy's whole philosophy is based around business and aligning soccer with simply just being a job. And everyone on the Uber team accepts this philosophy and plays under it, but the only one that denies it is in this next chapter, Barou. Back to the newest chapter, Barou calls it weak and calls it an irresolute philosophy. He says he didn't come here to play such a weak-willed brand of football, and simply walks out of the room. We then cut to the training field where Barou is testing his shot out and training his body, to which Mark Snuffy says he has a nice shot and his physical specs are top-notch as well. He continues to say that looking at the data among the Ubers, he's the most suited to be a striker, which would get Barou above the likes of Shuto Sendo of the U20 team. Snuffy then asks him that even if he's faking it, can he please try his football philosophy at least once, but Barou simply responds, is he seriously able to call himself a master? And continues to refuse it since football for him isn't a job, it's a way for him to become the king of the field, and he's going to conquer the world his way, so if Snuffy wants to utilize him, then he'll have to adjust to his own philosophy. Snuffy laughs at this and says, nice, you're an interesting guy, but he continues to say you think of yourself as a genius, an elite who's better than everyone, am I right? All while stealing the ball from right under Barou. Snuffy then says before a footballer, you're just a person. If you can't understand that difference, then you're just an amateur. At that moment, Barou starts rushing at him, telling him to shut up, trying to steal the ball back from him, but Snuffy, being a pro and a master, is able to easily dodge around Barou, and continues to say that in the end, he's been living his life belittling those who you feel are untalented, and your talent is a gift from your parents that are handed down to you, and if you don't understand that, you're not a pro footballer. Barou responds to this, completely missing the point of what Snuffy says, and calls it BS, and says so if he just thinks his mom and dad, he can become the best player in the world. Then he'll become number one without thanking them, and he'll become the most ungrateful world's number one striker. Snuffy then says that there was a time where he was exactly like Barou, getting by life solely off of his own talent, alongside his best friend. He said that they took full advantage of the wealth and luxuries that come with being a superstar player, and they believed that they were going to become the king of the field. But they messed up by skipping training and allowing their skills to diminish, and also suffered injuries due to overworking themselves. They then lost their place in the starting 11 and got into several scandals. Mind you, in this panel I forgot to mention that Snuffy is completely physically overpowering Barou. Even though Snuffy doesn't look like the amazing physical type, he's able to easily throw around some beast like Barou, which is pretty insane to me. Snuffy continues to say while Barou's on the ground that when a man falls, it only takes an instant. but Barou doesn't understand it and says, "What does this loser story got to do with me?" But Snuffy responds that he finally shattered and his best friend offed himself, and he continues to ask Barou if he'll be able to love himself when he's no longer a genius. He says one more time that before you're a football player, you're a person, and that regardless of whether you're talented or not, value your life, and once more asks Barou to work with him and become interested in succeeding him as the Uber's next king. So now that we've gotten the chapter review out of the way, that part of the video out of the way, we can finally get into what I think of it. The first thing I'd like to note is that this chapter once again shows the amazing analytical skills and defensive skills of the Uber's team, showing us that from Gagamaru's perspective, it looks like a smokescreen has fell under the field and he can't see anything. These players were able to easily get through the midfield together and get near the goal where Barou thrives in order for him to score a goal. And I may be wrong on this, but if you look on the panel, you can kind of see faint lines of the midline where Barou is standing and shooting from, which could imply he makes shots from the midline now, and that the Ubers don't even have to go too far to get a goal off. The main cliffhanger on this chapter is whether or not the goal goes in. And in my opinion, I think it's definitely possible that it didn't go in, but it's also possible that it did go in. If you ask me what I think is more probable and what's more likely to happen, I'd say that it's probably a goal, just because Gagamaru's ability mainly comes from his vision, and then next to that is obviously his physical capabilities. But who knows, maybe something like the U20 match will happen and have like a goalie egoist awakening, anything could really happen. This chapter also showed Barou's logical side and maybe some of his soft side as well, since after hearing this story from Snuffy, he did submit to the Uber's team philosophy and began actually passing the ball, allowing him to score more goals. So this gives Barou more opportunity in the future, since we know he's not just a super selfish player anymore and is willing to pass the ball in certain situations. This chapter also shows some of Snuffy's personality, showing that he values detachment from the game of soccer due to what happened in his past with his friend and all, and it completely makes sense to play the game like this and also think of it this way, but it does kind of go against the things that the blockers were taught by Ego, since they've been treating soccer like it's a life or death situation from the very first match. But overall, this philosophy may have changed Barou for the better, since we do know he was able to score a hat trick. I also like to mention that I've seen a lot of debate on Noah as a master, and who the best master is, or the masters ranked really, and I've been thinking about doing a video on it, so if you want a video on that, comment down below. But just to go over it real quick, I wanted to say that Noah definitely is not a bad master. We see that he basically makes the entire dynamic between Team Isagi and Team Kaiser, which is what allows him to thrive in the first place and forces Isagi's evolution. Overall, this duality has been doing pretty well for the team, seeing as they've never lost a game, and it's only really evolved people from what we see, such as Yukimiya, Isagi, and people like that. So just saying Noah isn't a good master because he doesn't think about his players' mental health or whatever kind of would be hypocritical if you think that someone like Ego is a good master, because he literally didn't even let people from Blue Hawk go outside unless they got a certain amount of points. They were forced to stay in the Blue Hawk facility for quite a long time until they got a certain amount of points. So mental health really didn't matter in Blue Hawk until people started bringing it up as a point to discredit Noah for being a good master. But I think he's a pretty good one, so if you want to see a video in depth on that, make sure to just comment down below. For my predictions for the next chapter's name is Stealth Kill. I don't really know who this chapter will revolve around. If I had to guess, it would probably be Nico, due to his small stature and his ability to play, but it could very well be Isagi as well, since he is someone who goes in people's blind spots, since that's something he learned. But I'd also like to mention that I believe that Lorenzo will start targeting Isagi over Kaiser, just based on what he's seen from Isagi in the past few chapters. He was even questioning if he was only worth 50 million, so it definitely is possible for him to be targeting Isagi next. And I'd also like to mention that if you didn't know, in the next week the manga is going on hiatus for a while because of the Japanese Golden Week, which is basically, I believe, a holiday or a time of vacation for Japanese people, and the chapter will return on May 10th. But whatever happens, the next chapter definitely will be hype. If you want to stay posted on the chapters, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on post notifications, since I do post basically every chapter review every week. And if you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. But that's all I have for today. But yeah, goodbye.